Hey guys, welcome to another Fieldcraft Survival video. Today we have a special guest, Robbie Kroger with Blood Origins. And we've partnered together with them to work on some special med projects. And so we brought along our combat medic, Nate, and we're gonna get into a little bit about what you guys are doing and kind of how we're gonna build some med kits specifically for you guys. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you and about Blood Origins?
Yeah, 100%. Firstly, thank you for your service, Nate.
Thanks for your support.
Yeah, Blood Origins simply is a non-profit. We're a charity that seeks to convey the truth about hunting. That's our mission. And what does the truth and what does conveying the truth mean? It means educating, it means conveying, it means relaying information through content. So documentaries, infographics. We seem to be the spear tip on hunting issues all around the world. We're a rational voice that creates content and speech for the non-hunting majority to change this perception around who we are as hunters.
So to help people understand the importance of hunting, how to ethically hunt. I mean, at Fieldcraft, hunting to us is a part of our lifestyle.
Right.
Med is intertwined in everything we do. And so that's why it made sense for us to partner with you on this.
Yeah, people have focused on the action for so long. We focus on the benefits and consequences of that action. And to do that, we have to go to some pretty crazy places.
Awesome. Tell us about some of the places you're going this year.
So this year we're going to Spain. Next week we'll be going to New Zealand. So we'll be spending 3 weeks in the mountains of New Zealand, then transitioning over to Australia. We'll be in Botswana. So varied climates, varied geographies, varied terrains. And then last year, the reason why I contacted you guys is we were in Zambia, and it was 120 F daily temperatures. And we got into a bit of a bind and we needed help. And I didn't have the medical kit nor the know-how on how to get me and my team out of the bind.
So Nate, why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of how you go about addressing some of these specifics?
So just the way that my mind works every single time is every medical kit is very purposed. For where I'm going, what the mission is, how many people I need to take care of. And then from there, I can start doing like course of action development. I can start with, okay, what is the worst case scenario? What's the best case scenario? What's most likely to happen? What's least likely to happen? And then cover as much of that as possible. What do I need to carry on my person? What am I going to maybe, carry centrally for a team? Kind of, some stuff that we might be able to, a group bag that everyone can kind of work out of. And then basically, prioritize, because that's the biggest thing with hunting, specifically is we're going to max our kits out on space even before we max them out on weight, which is saying something because when you're running around, walking everywhere, weight is actually still another big consideration. So I have to resist the urge to bring the kitchen sink because everything sounds like a great idea, but I don't want to carry the kitchen sink.
But you're also saying that, Robbie, what is the thing that you're going to be like most worried about? And then you're going to bring your expertise to the table to say, I think you should be worried about this, this, and this in these terrains, in these climate conditions, and us figure out what the best little pack is that would get us either back to base or ready for a medevac that's coming through global rescue or something like that.
So we have locations, right? We have how many team members?
Yeah.
We're looking about 3 to 5 team members.
Yep.
And generally, how long are you out?
We're probably in every location for about 5 days.
Okay. So that's kind of the parameters we're working with. Are we looking at anything else outside of kind of that location, team size, and duration?
So you talked about a rescue from possibly a global rescue. That would be the last one, would be like evacuation time.
Right.
How long might I have to stabilize myself and be able to survive that time, while I'm waiting for help to come to me?
Well, I will give you an example. Where we got massive heat stroke. We were in a place called the Forgotten Zambezi. We were only 120 kilometers from the nearest, and I'm going to say town. It wasn't really a town, but that was 7 hours of driving on 120 kilometers of road. There was no airstrip. There's nothing where we were. So if something happened in terms of evac, like it was vehicle as fast as you can possibly drive on that type of road to the nearest town to potentially then get medevac from there to a bigger city like Lusaka in Zambia, which then has medical facilities. And if they're not up to standard, then they're still out.
And so for those long evacuation platforms, the inside of it, like team bags or different things, even, well, what we'll carry from a mobility standpoint is we have to upgrade what our capabilities are, because there's a good chance you're going to be obviously on your own for a long period of time, versus in the city, you know, where we drive around here every day, you know, EMS is only minutes away. And so we can severely decrease the amount of stuff we'll need to keep on us.
Yeah.
Awesome. So maybe let's jump in and start looking at kind of some of the things that we're going to put
100%.
together. I'll let you two guys get at it and kind of walk through what we're looking at.
All right, perfect.
So again, we talked about course of action development. My biggest thing is I always have to start with worst case scenario. And worst case scenario is some type of traumatic injury. You know, and we're generally talking about preventable causes of death. Traumatic injury patterns can be super vast, and the way that they happen obviously is even more vast, which is helpful to then like narrow it down to the stuff that we could do something about.
So, but what we're trying to do here is you're trying to create a kit, trauma specific, that will get us out of the bind to a place that someone with professional help can take over.
And so as soon as we start talking about trauma, the way that we treat trauma is systematically, like, and that's where I was always taught the most important tool is actually going to be your patient assessment, because you're gathering a better picture of what's going on with somebody, and you understand maybe more of some of the physiological processes to be able to get creative, intervene.
Okay.
So March assessment. M is massive hemorrhaging, A is airway, R stands for respirations, C is circulation, and then H is hypothermia, head injury, HELP, you know, and then that's kind of the end of, you know, our acronym, but H gets a little loaded.
And you work through that.
Exactly. Starting with massive hemorrhaging, that's why we throw in the soft T. Tourniquets have probably saved more lives as such an easy adjunct, that only being half the equation for massive hemorrhaging, because again, we can get bleeds super high into these junctional areas, the armpits and the groin. That's where we get into wound packing. Okay. Now, wound packing, especially with hemostatics, so this is an Elias Hemcon bandage. This is impregnated with a hemostatic agent, which is going to help stop bleeding faster. The way that people think about hemostatics is that it's like this magical thing that I just shove inside of a cavity and it just is going to stop bleeding.
Yeah.
Not quite the case. The hemostatic agent has to come in contact with the source of the bleed. And even when I'm doing wound packing, I want cone of force pressure to occlude the vessel. And I want that pressure all the way out. M for massive hemorrhaging. Airway. I don't have any airway adjuncts in here. The reason being is because they require a lot more training than I think people might give them credit for. It's not always effective in the situations, and you'd be surprised with how much airway management you can do with just position. Into a tripod position, if someone's unconscious, you can leave them in a recovery position, and just being able to not fight gravity is a pretty useful tool. Moving on for R's respirations, and respirations really is just breathing. But now we're worried about the chest wall specifically. This is when we're gonna, maybe cut off clothes or expose the chest wall to make sure we don't have anything that's going to impede breathing. So this is the halo specifically, like there's halo, we have hyphens as well, but this has a vented seal and a non-vented seal. I like specifically vented seals depending on what your experience level is, because you don't have to worry about burping that stuff as much. Vented seals to me are a good option for someone who might have less experience to kind of just set it and forget it and basically move on to help. Respirations, move on to circulation. Circulation is really all, again, about perfusion. At both the respiration and the circulation step, we're doing a lot of measuring, a lot of actually trying to measure what someone's state is. And so that's what circulation is. We're trying to promote perfusion. We can also loosen restrictive clothing. We can remove jewelry, elevate feet, stuff like that, depending on what the injuries are.
Alrighty.
And then moving on to H. H again is hypothermia. Hypothermia, even in warm climates, is so serious that we have these, I would say, more intense interventions to be able to aggressively try to prevent hypothermia. In some of these lightweight, compact kits, though, where I want, again, something is always better than nothing. Yeah. Using smaller blankets like this to reflect heat. I'm worried about mechanisms of heat loss. Conduction, convection,
Gotcha. Okay.
So that essentially is what's going to cover my basis for trauma. And we kept a lot of that here.
Yep. What are these? Gloves?
So, these are, just gloves. As no glove, no love, as we say. And so the next most common stuff that I'm worried about are sprains, strains, getting rolled ankles, all these things, dislocations. This right here is the Rise. This is probably one of my new favorite splints that I've seen. It's kind of an awesome substitute for the SAM splint, which is another great tool, but it's harder to get those lightweight and compact, where this is just enough rigidity, and I can play around with that and give it lots of different configurations to handle a bunch of super common splints.
What's this guy?
So this is a cravat, right? I mean, this is probably one of the most common versatile pieces of kit that we can carry. You can use these. You see them super common for like slings and swaths, right?
Yep.
Because we're trying to work with such a small kit, now we start getting into like adding trauma shears, right? Well, being able to cut and have access.
Yeah.
To gain access to injuries, you can't treat what you can't find. So sometimes I'm going to have to cut away clothing to actually get a good view as to.
So worth it versus trying to get a knife in there.
Okay, so yep, and a chem light or a glow stick. A light source is a mandatory piece of every kit that I build. I generally have a headlight, headlamp, and that's what I keep with me always. A lot of times will kind of loop them onto themselves, attached to med kits. When I close the zipper, I have the headlamp tucked inside. Maybe the last part of the kit that we didn't talk about was help. Super remote places is where you're headed. Being wounded out there in the bush is still a problem. So being able to get out of the bush. I always said my job is to get you from A to B without dying. Mm-hmm. You know, if you're going to die, you got to do it with somebody else. That's essentially my role.
So this is on me all the time.
Right. The best thing to do is we're using pouches like this, especially this one from Everly Stock kind of just goes on top of a pack that you already have.
Yep.
But in here, there's obviously not like any dividers. So that's why we have these smaller bags as well.
So you're suggesting like fill one of these little bags that are almost like little divided, like there'll be one that is hydration and that one goes in there. There'll be a boo-boo kit that is Band-Aids and antibiotic ointment and whatnot. That's another pack and that goes in there.
Exactly. I mean, because we want to make sure we're carrying complete systems, right? So if you have cuts, lacerations, whatever. Well, if we said that this was going to be our boo-boo kit, right? Well, Band-Aids of all shapes and size, some gauze, some triple antibiotic ointment, some like antibacterial like wipes and stuff to be able to like, clean an area, peroxide or whatever. Steri strips if we're, trying to close different injuries. All of that would go inside of, the little boo-boo kit to treat small cuts, lacerations, stuff like that. Okay. So these are all the different kind of components of the kits, but as we talked about earlier, the equipment is only probably
as good as I can use it.
Right, a third of what the battle is having the right stuff, and then now we got to spend more time actually diving into each item and how to use it and when to use it.
Okay, sounds good. Let's do it.
Have this arm limp, pull it again from the base, like brace it up against something that's not going to go anywhere. So, and then the cool thing about these tourniquets is they have this tension rod, like right here. It's right here.
Okay.
Yes.
Yowza.
Yeah. If it doesn't hurt, it doesn't. Okay. You can lift up his leg if you want to. And everyone's got like those natural folds at the top of their thighs and be packing. I was setting this up here because that's what I was working on earlier. And once I find the source of the bleed, I'm pushing that little power ball. And so this is where I would hold pressure for that 3 to 5 minutes to make sure that it's working. Because what I want to do is I want to try to clean the area for just
cleaning. Yep. Keep it pressure on. Okay, now I can roll this.
So anytime we're doing splinting, we're going to measure off of like the unaffected arm.
Okay, and so now you're wrapping this with gauze.
Yes, or I would fold that one, that one down. Hey, what's up everyone? We just wrapped up doing some training for all the different components of the trauma kit that we put together for him while he's hiking literally around the world, doing some hunting. Spending time talking about each piece of the kit is super important. The kit only matters so much. What actually matters is if you have the training behind it. Even if you have the equipment, you have to be able to find the problem in the right time and to be able to actually use it in the right context. How do you feel like these kits turned out so far?
Yeah, I think they turned out brilliant, really. We talked about trauma being number one, like the number one thing that we need to tackle immediately. That's what this kit is offering us. It's providing us the tools. The training, obviously, is the next thing that we've just gone through. I feel now like I have something that I can take with us, that I'm confident enough if something happens, I know what I'm pulling out, what I'm going for first, and that we'll take all around the world with us.
Perfect.
So thank you.
Yeah.